All right, we're at 7 o'clock.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Douglas School Committee meeting on Wednesday, January 4th, 2023 to order at 7 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed on via Zoom, and I'll read the mission statement. The Douglas Public Schools offer diverse learning experiences that meet the academic, social, physical, and emotional needs of all students. We provide a safe, supportive, and challenging learning environment in which students may achieve academic success and personal growth. Decisions are made in the best interest of students. And we go right to public comment, right?
Correct. We don't have a student rep today, so we will go to public comment.
And is there anybody on? Nobody? Okay. So we'll close public comment. Any old business?
We do not.
Right to the new business and superintendent's report.
Hey, so welcome everyone. Hope everyone had a nice holiday break and time away with their family and was able to recharge a little bit. So happy New Year to everyone. I'm going to give people an update on my goals at this halfway point in the school year, almost halfway point. Just as a reminder to people who are watching, back in the fall, school committee and I have talked about and discussed several goals. So we have two parts. One is my evaluation based off of the rubric and the standards. There are 4 standards and there are 21 indicators. So what we agreed to is to pick one indicator under each of the 4 standards, and that's going to be the basis of a part of my evaluation. So I just want to go through those 4 standards and those 4 indicators with you, give people just an update as to where we are and where we're going. So the first standard is instructional leadership, and the indicator we picked is evaluation, and that talks about the importance of getting in, evaluating teachers and staff and providing good quality feedback to staff. Also talks a little bit about making sure that teacher goals and our goals are meaningful and actionable, and also talks about the importance of looking at data and reviewing data about student learning and growth and achievement in order to improve student performance. So just some quick updates as to some of the things that we've done. At the beginning of the year, at professional development days in August and throughout the start of the school year, principals met with staff to look at the 10 look-fors that DESE had proposed that we look at when we go in to do observations. Principals, when they go in, they evaluate, they're picking a couple of these and reporting out on it. We reported out our MCAS, STARS, and NWEA data to start the school year off. We've really used a lot of that data to drive what's going on inside the classroom. You know, Mrs. Socia is here, so I'll throw her some kudos. One thing she did is she met with each of her teachers and looked at each of the teachers' students and looked at where they were in STARS, what their performance was, and then came up with an individual plan for each of those students as to how they could move from red to yellow, yellow to green, green to blue. And that's proved to be pretty meaningful. She ended up doing a quarter assessment, and over half the kids had moved up one level. All principals at the primary, elementary, and middle are doing their official mid-year assessments starting in middle of January, and I'm going to have them report out to the school committee and the community the first meeting in March, just to kind of see where we went from the beginning of the year and the middle of the year. Takes about a week to do that test, then give them a week or 2 to actually look at the data. We only have that meeting February 1, so we'll do it on March 1 for it. But it'd be good just to get that evidence back as to, is what we're doing working? Do we need to change it? Do we not need to change it? The other thing is our focus that we've had on MTSS and really making sure that staff understands what it is. We have that common language. We understand that we're looking when we're going inside to see teachers and instruction, that we're looking at that social, emotional, behavioral, and academic aspects of what's going on inside classroom. We're making sure that we have equitable access for all of our kids, that we're seeing some level of UDL. Again, this is new and it takes some time, that teachers are finding engaging ways to present information. They're presenting information in multiple modalities, and they're also having kids interact with information multiple ways. So that's the first one. The second standard is management and operations, and we chose the environment indicator. which speaks to making sure that we have plans, procedures, routines, operations, systems to address the safety, health, and emotional and social emotional needs of our students. So, we started and we launched some monthly Zoom meetings where we're reaching out to the community on a bunch of various topics. We built a calming room at the primary school. We've modified some spaces for students at the elementary school. We applied and we received that DESE grant for $25,000 to put a plan in place to address the social emotional needs of students. I had my first meeting today with my my mentor. So it was good. He gave me a couple of good ideas, and he's going to send out an email to meet with a full Douglas team. Our school psychologists have been collecting data around the SEL for students. Again, Cindy has here our school adjustment counselor at the primary meets on a regular basis with teachers and with students for SEL. Part of our PD day on the 13th, we have Erin Alcott presenting de-escalation strategies to teachers, and also just having teachers be aware of what some triggers are for kids as they begin to escalate. How can you help them de-escalate? So those are some of the things under the social emotional piece of it. Standard 3, we have family and community engagement, and the indicator was engagement, and how can we partner with families? Again, talked a little bit about the Zoom meetings that we're sponsoring. I've done some meet and greets with people. Mr. DeFonzo's done some meet and greets with people. We sent that survey out to families over 3 weeks about how we can get some feedback on open house. So principals are looking at that. Cindy's had some mystery readers, which is awesome. Bob O'Brien has Student of the Month, where he has parents come in. He's also tried to reach out to the community this week. He reached out to, I believe, this month to police and fire. Next month, he's going to reach out to people over on the municipal side at Town Hall to come in. Mr. DeFonzo started a pretty successful have lunch with your student event where probably 3-4 times a month we've had parents come in and meet. We've had the Veterans Day assemblies in multiple meeting buildings. So again, just different ways that we can engage and have the community come in. And then the last piece, the last indicator under professional culture was indicator 4, continuous learning. And it's how do we nurture a culture where staff members are reflective about their practice and student data, current research, and best practices and theory to adapt instruction. So we talked about the work that the principals did beginning of the year to look at their NWA, MCAS, and STARS data. A lot of their goals are aligned to that. I'm excited to see where we are with all the stuff that we've implemented from beginning of the year to middle of the year. We talked about Cindy's one-to-one meetings. Principals across the 4 schools have had data meetings on a regular basis with staff to look at data and common planning time. So those are just some of the things we have to have staff look at data and look at information in order to drive instruction and improve student performance and outcomes. Before I dive into my 4 goals, I'll see if the committee has any questions on those 4 standards before I move on.
Dr. Vieira, where are you at with the implementation of the bullying prevention plan?
Good question. So it's on the agenda for next in 2 weeks. We met today on it. It ended up being a bigger task than like everything else, than what we anticipated. So what we did is we had the Uxbridge plan, and we looked at that, and we tweaked, we adapted that. The district had a building-based plans that we merged together. Then we also had school committee policy that we merged together. So we have everything merged together. We're working on putting everything so we make sure we have it all written in one voice, because when you have 4 or 5 different documents, it's blended together different ways. The other thing that we're really examining and diving into is, before we present, we want to make sure we have answers to questions. So part of the plan, for instance, speaks to educating parents on bullying laws and bullying resources. Well, before we write that we're going to do it, we at least need to have a plan as to what that's going to look like. So after we implement the plan, we can go out and do stuff with families. Another thing in there says that the plan needs to be reviewed twice a year by school councils. So we still need to finish it And then we want school councils and parents to have a look at it before we do it. So I'm going to present a draft copy next week for everyone to take a look at. And then we still need a couple more cycles to look through it to make sure it's fit for publication.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know it's not an easy task. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Socha, I apologize because I'm not trying to throw you on the spot. Just clarification on wording. Calming room, is that a proactive strategy or is that a reactive strategy? And who can you access the calming room?
So I would say anyone can access the calming room. We've used it in several different situations this year where someone just needs a break. They're having a difficult time transitioning in, leaving mommy outside in the parking lot. So the para or the teacher, whoever is available, or Mrs. Purvis will walk the student down. We actually have two different locations. So one has a calming dog, you know, the big red dog, or a weighted blanket, or just some manipulative. So it's just a way to get the child's mind off of their concern. If someone's really having a behavioral meltdown where they can't use materials, they might hurt themselves, then we have the one that was built within the classroom. So that's where they would go. So I would say we're being proactive, and
So there's two, that was I appreciate that. There's two.
Yes,
So
there's
there's one that's
two.
more like
Mhm.
I could just be in the classroom and say, I need to use the calming room and go down.
Right.
To the
And
calming
some
room.
kids have it in their plans that I just need a break after I do a task. So it's a place for them to go instead of going into either my office or Mrs. Purvis's office, which works, but this is
Oh,
much better.
Right. And it can be always accessible. It doesn't matter
Right.
if you're in a meeting.
Right.
or
It's for
whatever.
anyone.
And it's
Actually,
a room. I know a lot of programs have like cubes. So having
Mhm.
it be in a room is a little bit bigger and
mhm. Right. And there's a carpet in there. There's a chair. There's some Legos. Like, again, it's for something to get the kid's mind off of either leaving mom or having a tough morning or just a transition that's
pit
difficult for them.
stop, kind of a
Yeah.
pit stop.
Right. I think I want to go in there sometimes, play.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And people, you know, it's amazing how much time things take. We actually drew up some plans to alter one of our spaces in the elementary school because the classrooms were a little too big. So we have a classroom that instead of your standing 800-900 square feet is more around 400-500 square feet. And we're building 3 little cubbies in there for students just to make that space a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate for kids. And we had to get the plans drawn up. We had to get the plans approved by the building inspector. Building inspector went back and forth to make sure it met code, it met specs. And then we had to get someone to actually come in and do the work, which we all know isn't easy to find these days. So it seems like, well, just put a 6-foot wall by 6-foot wall up there and just nail it to the ground into the wall. If it was that easy, we would have done it back in, Courtney's laughing. If it was that easy, we would have done it back in August. But when you're altering spaces and you're doing it, you need the building inspector to sign off of it. He wants to look at plans. He wants to make sure the space is safe for kids. And then you have to actually go out and get someone to do the work. So it does, unfortunately, takes a little bit more time than what any of us want. But yeah, good questions.
I was curious, is the family engagement committee still sort of meeting, or is that still being
The engagement
utilized?
committee- The family engagement committee isn't meeting or hasn't met this year. What they did is they gave me a bunch of recommendations of things to try to do for this year. So one of the things, for instance, was take a good look at our open houses and our parent teacher conferences. So we did the survey. I think there was only one building we hit double digits in responses. Everything else was 4, 5, 6 responses. So not really a huge, massive sample size for it. Responses ran the gamut of, it's fine, leave it as it is, to, hey, it'd be nice if you could tweak, to you should add more days. So we did that. Another thing that came out of it was, how can we make the buildings more accessible to to families. Cindy did some stuff with some mystery readers and bringing in retirees and other people from the community. Bob's trying to invite in other people. I did my meet and greet with the principal coffee hour. I did one in the morning, I did one in the afternoon. I had one person come to each. We did our first thing with Care Solace, where we opened that up for people to learn about the product. We didn't have anyone come to that.
All came to my basic rights for CPAC. I'm sorry.
Oh, was it the same night?
It was the same night. Yep.
Okay,
But I was scheduled for CPAC was scheduled first.
okay. We had the Worcester County DA's office do a presentation on cyber safety and security. We had one family, a husband and a wife, come to that. So that's the feedback we got. So we're implementing it. It hasn't taken off how I was hoping, but I want to give it a few more tries to see what happens. All right. So next are my 4 goals. First goal is a professional practice goal, and that's on instructional leadership. And it really speaks to the professional development and the work we're going to do to provide teachers with the resources to, after they identify the gaps and deficiencies in student achievement, what PD and what resources, what supports do they need to go out and implement them. So when the principals present in early March, we'll talk about the data, but they'll also infuse in there what they've been doing inside their buildings for help. So some of the things that I can speak to at a higher level is, Cindy did some great work in meeting one-on-one with people to look at what their plans are and how you can identify weaknesses. Bob's doing some stuff once a week when he meets with people on common planning time. We actually had 2 people from the Norton Public Schools who were gracious enough, the assistant superintendent and their math director, their math coach, come in and spend some time with Cindy and with Anthony and with staff and kind of give us an overview of, they met with teachers and kind of give us some feedback as to what we can do to help with our math instruction. So that was really valuable. And we've been doing a lot of work with literacy. So really excited to see in a couple of weeks where we are with that data and that PD. The second goal is a student learning goal. And if you remember at the beginning of the year, we talked about each principal identifying 2 areas of strength, of need. So Cindy was a little nervous and her staff was nervous when she wanted 100% of her kids to be at grade level. We said, hey, it's a great goal. If we get to 95, that's awesome. So we'll see where we're moving with that. Anthony had an ELA and a math goal. Bob had a goal with MCAS and also a goal with attendance. And I'm forgetting what Tara had. So they'll present those goals to you and where we are in March. The third goal, the district development, we talked about making sure that we start a process of aligning making sure our curriculum is aligned to the state frameworks. To this date, we haven't had the time to start that. We're trying to figure out how to do that this year, but with everything that we've had going on and principals running around covering classes, being short, we're trying to figure out the best way to do that. And then the last one is our MTSS goal in making sure that people understand what MTS is, the various components of it. And principals have done a great job discussing that at weekly admin, at their meetings. We've discussed in our admin meetings. It was part of our October PD day. We have some work going on in our January PD around equity, which is important. I presented at CPAC and in my coffee hours around MTSS. Some of the stuff we're doing on de-escalation strategies and signs to make sure kids are engaged inside classrooms. We'll see that at our January PD day. Tara is starting in a weekly memo this month. She said MTSS reminders. A lot of the goals that we see written have that MTSS language. So just having that common language out there is awesome. I received a wonderful email from a parent today who actually school choiced their child into the high school. And they have one child in our high school and a child in their own home district. And this parent is an administrator in a school system and just raved about how awesome things were for a child at the high school, and talked about how compassionate and caring the teachers were and how they've reached out. And she wished she knew about this earlier, and if she could have done it with her other child, she would. And then she ended with the just as a show of my gratitude, I do a lot of work with MTSS and UDL. I provide professional development as part of a bigger group. I would love to come in and meet with you to help support your staff in it. So we have a meeting on Friday at 10 o'clock to do it. So we're piecing together the parts of this MTSS. But, you know, in talking to the leadership team today, this work around MTSS, even around equity and SEL, isn't something that's ever done. You always have to keep doing it. You always have to keep refining it. You always have to keep working at it. You know, I equate this, if we think back 7, 8, 9 years ago when we started talking about SEL, and people said, how much longer are we going to have to talk about it? We're gonna, Teresa's laughing, we're gonna have to talk about it forever. It's not going away. Mental health, I mean, it changes from year to year. It looks different. I don't think any of us could have predicted 5, 6, 7 years ago what happened with the pandemic. I don't think any of us, when the iPhone came out 12, 13 years ago, could have ever predicted the impact of social media and texting and Instagram and Snapchat and all those devices, what that would do to, you know, middle school and high school students and their social emotional well-being. I was talking to a high school teacher on Tuesday. Even one thing I heard someone say a while ago is, you know, people who use Venmo, and you would never think of anything wrong with Venmo, but for those of us who don't use Venmo, when you pay someone money for something, you usually have to put what it's for. And sometimes people put, you know, for the gathering, for the pizza party, for this, and people will look and say, hey, I wasn't invited to that pizza party, or I wasn't invited to go out to dinner. So even though it wasn't posted on social media, people see that they paid for something through Venmo. So the SEL work doesn't go away. The equity work doesn't go away. The MTSS work won't go away. We just need to keep on doing it and working on it and refining it and doing different things to meet the needs of our kids. Questions?
I think we're doing amazing, we have a lot of great initiatives coming out. We're doing a ton of work. We're collecting a ton of data. We're doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
I just think that we all have to remember, as we're talking about those things, that all this stuff, we're raising the bar. We want our educators to work hard, you know, to have quality instruction and stuff like that, but they need SEL too. And they need those cultural climate, like they need our support too. And just making sure that as we're pushing down all these things, like we don't forget that we're pushing these down to teachers, to parents, to staff members that have been through the same pandemic too, and administrators and principals. You know, like we're saying we want this, this, and this, and this, but I don't want us to lose focus of the fact that these are real people. Like our teachers are and our staff are working extremely hard. And when you said like the principals are running around covering stuff like that, that's a lot of strain on a lot of people. And I don't want to forget those people and make sure that we're not just giving back to our staff too.
Correct. And, you know, like I mentioned that one of the initiatives we've had struggles meeting with, and we've struggled sometimes for meetings where I've had meetings set up with principals and they say, hey, I have to cover a class, or I have to cover a class so a teacher can go to a meeting, or we have a parent that came in because of something happened and I need to be there to work with the teacher and that parent. And then that meeting gets rescheduled and then rescheduled and rescheduled. And the same thing's happening to teachers, where teachers have all the best intentions sometimes to implement some of the stuff and do it. But then, you know, 6 kids are absent in a class for COVID. Now they're out 30% of their kids. They wait 5 days. Now you have to catch kids back up. There's that reality that's happening. You know, Friday we had that half day before the holiday. I think we were only running at about 60, 70% capacity that day. Now it is a half day and the day before the holiday, but I remember being in the halls and talking to teachers, and teachers say, I have 5 kids out today, I have 6 kids out today. And when you have classes with 22, 23 kids in it, to lose a quarter of your kids, you alter a little bit of what you're doing, but then when those kids come back, you have to catch them up. So you're right, all these initiatives that we're doing, we also have to remember there's the reality of what's happening every day inside classrooms, and it's finding that balance. As Mrs. Keegan reminds me, without balance, you become unbalanced. So I remember that. Other
It's
questions?
deep. I know that we're gonna get a report from the principals in like 2 to 3 months, but I'm eager to know if there, at what kind of growth that there has been. I know you kind of touched on it with what Ms. Sosha has seen. And maybe Ms. Sosha, you can say a bit about what you're seeing. Just kind of like a very quick overview that we're heading in the right direction kind of thing.
So our teachers gave that mid-cycle star again in ELA and grade, I think they just did ELA, they didn't do the math. And for every teacher and all the kids listed that were in the bottom two, say under grade level, we made huge progress. I mean, the teachers were so excited just to see that. They felt so good. They felt valued. They said, what we're doing works. When I met with them and they had their binder, I said, okay, let's go kid by kid. Let's see what do you have for this one? I mean, they had binders saying, this is what I tried. This is what worked. They're meeting with the para once in the morning. They're meeting with me 1-to-1. It's no more groups of 6. It's groups of 2 or 1-on-1 time. So they felt so good about the work that they'd been doing. So KN1 made huge progress. So we're excited to see what it will be in January.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. It helps us breathe a little
Yes,
easier.
us too, because I think they were nervous, because we did set the bar high. So
Yeah.
they really felt good about what they saw. I mean, kids really surprised them. And in kindergarten, some had never been in school. So what you see for that first assessment might not be a true picture. It might be they were still adjusting, they were, nervous, or that was another thing we noticed about the star. Some of the kids that were absent and they did the makeups, they did them 1-to-1, where typically they do it all as a class, and they feel like that 1-to-1 made a huge difference. So we want to look at that and maybe administer the test a different way instead of whole class.
Yeah. And I think it's great that you've looked at every kid on the individual level. I know that's a lot of work, but I think that that's the best way to kind of help each kid get to where they need to be. So thank you for doing that. I think that's really important.
And I think the meetings 1-to-1 were so valuable instead of common planning time, when it's a general conversation. This way, each teacher, bring your data, show me what you have, and then we had those good conversations and what we could do differently if something wasn't working and if they were looking for suggestions. So common planning time is great to brainstorm, but that 1-to-1 made a huge difference for me.
One of the,
More of a supervision type of time.
yeah, one of the multiple things we'll look at, like STARS is great to give people feedback. We've also looked at how we could potentially implement the DIBELS assessment for next year, where it gives once we've identified our struggling readers, the DIBELS provides us probably a little bit more in-depth and better data and information. Although there's some, you got your science or reading people who, we'll go down that another day, but we're looking at implementing DIBELS to give teachers another assessment tool to kind of provide backup and information for them. We met, I think it was right before vacation, and we have a follow-up meeting in 2 weeks. It was myself, Dr. Merrick, Mrs. Sosha, and Mr. DeFonso. We met with our rep from the Wonders program, and she was absolutely awesome. And I hadn't seen the presentation of how that program is structured within K1 and in 2. It's really helpful. It starts with that important phonics lesson to make sure that kids understand how to decode and how to read, and then it builds upon that throughout the time. And it's very concrete and sequential, and all the parts are structured together. So principals have been working, Cindy and Anthony, to kind of look at some things that we can do to make sure that we can strengthen that program, because if you strengthen that program, you can do some pretty cool things with it. One of the other things that we looked at is we have Foundations, which is a phonics program to help kids read, which we embed on top of the Wonders program. We currently only have that in grades K and 1. Next year, we're going to do it in 2nd grade, which is so important. And then hopefully the year after that for a tier 2 or tier 3 instruction for grade 3 students. But again, just building upon what we're seeing as to how we can help kids read better. The math feedback that we got from Norton was phenomenal. They came in and they spent a day with us. I think it was a Friday before the holiday. And again, went inside, talked to teachers, talked to principals, and just gave us some good feedback as to things we can be doing inside classrooms. But, Beth, you said it, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we have all these initiatives, but we only have so many resources and so many people to do it. And you said it, I had a professor when I got my CAGs back in mid to late 90s, top down, throw up. You can only, if you keep on pushing, at some point it's going to come up. So you have to balance those initiatives to make sure that we have the capacity, go through our principals and our teachers, to be able to implement them. Because if you don't do it right, and you don't have the buy-in, people are just going to go through the motions, and it's not effective.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna leave, and we don't want them to leave. We want to keep our staff. We want to retain our staff. Like things like Mrs. Socia saying, like they want to feel proud of they want to feel proud with you of the work that they're doing, and they want to see that validation. I just throwing out there, it would be really cool if you were to do one of your presentations on like a reading curriculum, like what our reading curriculum is, and like what our math curriculums and stuff like that are, because that's stuff that parents, the CPAC gets asked that a lot about. What is the curriculum? What does that look like? How do I support it? And I think just might get a little bit better attendance at that, especially with the Cindy's age group. Like if we can get it right, we can really get it right, then it can help everybody.
And Beth, let's talk offline about maybe having us come to a CPAC, or having CPAC sponsor us, but opening it up to everyone.
We can certainly do that. I just want to make sure, I think it's an all student thing. I think it's really important for all families to understand what curriculum their children are using, and what does that teach, and what does that look like, and why are they making me cross my math all the time and make these things when I just added it? Like, what is just devil's advocate. As I'm saying, we shouldn't be adding more stuff,
Cindy,
but we're already doing it, so maybe just like presenting what we're doing.
Cindy, real quickly, we had a local district who's looking to adopt the Wonders program. They came in and they met with the primary and they met with the elementary school teachers to find out and talk about how we're using the program. What Cindy's going to say was also echoed in the elementary school, but Anthony's not here. So Cindy, just give a quick little update as to what the teachers from that other district said about ours, but more importantly, how our staff felt, or equally as important.
The other district came in and they were just thrown away. They were blown away with what we're doing in our Reading Wonders program. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. They said, you do this every day. They saw the small group. They saw small centers. They were just amazed. They were taking pictures. They were asking to share things. And they said they couldn't believe that the teachers did all this. We told them we would send them anything that they needed, or they could come and visit again. But they were shocked, and our teachers were like, wow. And again, it made them feel so good. And it just, it gave them that lift, because they do feel like they're working really, really hard. And I almost felt bad. I'm like, I'm putting a lot of pressure on them. And this made them feel good about what they're doing. They said, wow, we really are doing a lot. And I said, yes, you are. And they work hard. So, and it's hard to do centers every day and prepare all the materials and have them differentiated and, make sure you're hitting all the kids' needs. So it was a whole morning. They were so appreciative, to be able to come and visit. I know the curriculum director, they sent our teachers thank yous. They sent them gift cards after because they just couldn't believe what we were doing.
They were under $49.99.
Yes,
Yes.
they were.
Right. So again, I'm happy with what we're doing. When I typed that up to present to everyone over vacation, I'm like, we should be doing more. We could have been doing more, but then I had to sit back for a little bit because I do have that hour drive. And on my ride home, I think after Wednesday, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? We've had so many obstacles too this year that haven't been easy to do it. So, you just have time that I was thinking about meetings that we've had scheduled that we've had to reschedule because of events and a crisis going on. Can't tell you how many times I've had scheduled meetings with Anthony. He's like, I'm helping out a student. We're in the de-escalation room. We're doing this. And that's the reality of the day-to-day grind in a building when you don't have the additional, assistant principal in the building or an additional or the school psychologist full-time in a building, that a lot of that falls on a principal. So some of the, I'm pointing over here where my papers are. So over here, a lot of this work that we have that I presented sometimes gets put on a back burner because of the reality of what's happening every day in a building. So when I took that little bit of a step back and I went back and I read it again on Thursday, I'm like, you know what? Given what we've had to deal with this year, and again, it's happened everywhere, we're making some good progress, but we need to keep on moving forward because our kids deserve it. It's what they're entitled to. It's what they need. As I said a couple of times, I had a superintendent I worked for that said, you get 180 days in Mrs. Brooks' 10th grade class. You got to make all 180 count, right? So, and that's important. That stuck with me. I mean, kids only get 180 days in the first grade. No, and they should be entitled to 180 days of high quality, high caliber, not 140, not 150, not 160, but 180. So it's that balancing act. Other questions?
I was just wondering, I know that there was a posting for a data person.
Yeah.
From what I could see, at the elementary or even, district-wide, we have somebody for that? And is that purpose for helping staff to be able to interpret data and?
No. So that data person does a few things. That data person does the majority of our reporting to DESE, does a lot of our uploading for Sims, does a lot of our iPass stuff. So it's data entry, data processing, data reporting to the state. That's the bulk of that job. There is some triage work that position was housed at the middle school. So there was some triage work that position did. My printer's down. I can't get this app to work. So there was some, hands-on stuff, but the bulk of that position was data entry and data reporting at the state level. We had a person in the position who resigned, and went off to another district. We've interviewed a few people for it. They weren't interested. One of the people that we interviewed was interested in doing it, but wanted to be 100% remote, and their hourly rate came to a prorated amount. I think of something like $175,000 for the year is what they were looking for. So we went in a different direction. Mr. Calabrese has two people that he's looking to interview this week for the position. I know he reached out to them. We talked yesterday. He was going to reach out today to the people to set up interviews. If that doesn't work, what we might have to do is next year restructure the position, and this year for the remainder of the year, see if we can contract out that data piece to a third party. Any other questions? All right. I don't know if I promise good or bad, but the next couple reports will be a little bit lengthier. We have some other work to do the end of January, then in February and March. So that's it for tonight for me. Thank you.
Okay, so then next we'll go to the school committee and subcommittee report, accounts payable report.
That's me. I'm getting it. Is- My apologies.
I don't believe there is
I don't
anything.
have it.
there,
I was
Beth. Yeah,
gonna say I
there
don't
are.
have it. Okay.
Right, there isn't anything, Beth, that was presented for this meeting.
There is nothing presented for the accounts payable report for this meeting.
Which is why you couldn't find it.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda.
Oh, sorry.
December
Yeah.
21st, 2022 meeting minutes.
Ugh.
Pull those up.
Very short.
Yeah, that looked like a nice short meeting.
Yeah, everything looked okay to me when I saw.
I move to approve to the December 21st, 2022 school committee meetings. It was called to order by Heather Moran at 7 PM.
I second.
Okay, motion made by Beth, seconded by Teresa. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstained? Okay, motion passes and let's see, we'll go on to the next thing would 2023 to 2024 preschool tuition fees.
Okay, so I can't believe that we're already looking at applications for next year's preschool. So that's why we're here. We have an informational open house for parents on January 30th. Prior to that, we do a mailing with the applications and information about the open house. So that's why we're early this year, so that we can kind of look at the rates. I did a comparison of some of the same districts that I had done previously. Some are just going with the same rate as they have, and some it's a little too early for them. They don't really know if they're changing them for the upcoming year. I think for us, because the last time we changed it was for FY22, we're happy leaving it the way it is. Courtney can talk about the financial part of that, but if you saw the rate comparison, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. Everybody's all over the place. If we're
Right on.
higher on one type, we're lower on a different one. Some don't have as many offerings as what we have. I can tell you, according to the census, there are 54 3-year-olds and 61 4-year-olds. So we'll be mailing out 115 application packets. Whitney, I don't know if you want to add anything about the financial.
Yep, sure. I did present to you the financial historical trend. And I do have projections for FY24. And as you know, I'm conservative with the revenues to start with. I do have the staff in there, and I did even add to the staff. I'm sorry. As far as to the revolving fund to free up about $45,000 from the general fund budget, and incorporated that in the revolving fund for the projections for FY24, because as you know, I'm preparing the FY24 budget. So I'm looking at all these other funding sources too. You know, even though I'm preparing the general fund, all those other funding sources come into play as well. As you can see, even though with the projections, revenue over expenditures is in the negative, but if you look at the ending, the fund balance for both FY23 projections and FY24, you know, they're definitely up there. In fact, if you divide out the expenditures by the 10 months, multiply it times 3 months, which is the typical amount that you'd keep in a fund balance, we're well over that, because that would be 65,400. So it's still well over that by, you know, roughly $30,000, like roughly. So, you know, I'm definitely comfortable with maintaining the rates that we have. I think given the economic conditions that people are dealing with, I feel it's extremely important to have the preschool for the students that we, you know, the open spots that we do have for them to be able to avail themselves of our program. I think we have an excellent program. I think it helps with their education as far as starting off in preschool and maintaining the Douglas Public Schools education all throughout. So there's a lot of value there. I just see it as just a wonderful program. And, you know, as you can see financially, I don't see any issues there in any way. And like I said, I've even added 45,000 to those expenditures by utilizing it to free up some of the general fund aspect of it. Because as you can see on this historical trend as well, we do still have funding from the general fund and also a small grant of $10,000. It also supports the program. That's a 262 grant. So I definitely concur with Mrs. Socha's recommendation. I didn't know if you had any questions.
There's no questions. I'll be looking for a motion to approve the tuition fees for the 2023-2024 school year with no increases.
I move to approve the following preschool tuition for the 2023-2024 school year, no increase from the current year. 5 days full, $6,600, 3 days full, $3,960, 2 days full, $2,640, 5 days half, $3,300, 3 days half, $2,420, and 2 days half, $1,760.
Motion made by, seconded by
Julie.
Julie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstained? It passes. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Socha.
thank you. All right, and next would be school business and operations managers report, transfers and reclassifications.
Yeah, for this evening, I do not have unfortunately, any transfers or reclassifications. But I'll repeat, I'm working on the FY24 budget, have to have that done for the January 18th meeting. So that is where all the focus is right now. So we'll be bringing that to you in a few weeks.
How's
The
that going,
preliminary.
Miss Courtney?
Preliminary.
How's it going, Miss Courtney?
That's going well.
All right, thank you. So are there any topics not anticipated?
There are not.
Then I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn January 4th, 2023's school committee meeting at 7:47 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.